Hey folks, unusual headline today. Man goes fishing in Kansas, catches the record crappie. They go to x-ray it to prove it's the record, and it's been dining on lead weights. Sounds like Biden's Build Back Better program. Welcome to Grounded, the place to hear the salty truth. I'm your host, Scott Cates, coming to you live from the Northeast Georgia mountains and the tiny town of Tiger, where today it's a gorgeous day out there. Near 70 degrees, going to be beautiful, but you're going to get some rain, folks. Something like 15 days of rain looks like in the forecast, so enjoy your sunshine today. Boy, I've got a great podcast for you today. Been out actually last week, but a number of things that were in the headlines from last week that I really wanted to cover, things that were on my heart, and just we're going to be a little bit all over the map today. But today I got a surprise. I got a co-host with me, a good friend, been a good friend to me 20 plus years. My friend Mark Gerrells. Say hi, Mark.
Hi, Mark.
Yes, sir. We are excited actually to be here and going through this today. We're going to actually cover headlines together. He's going to help chime in with me. We're going to take everything into consideration and talk about things that are coming on the horizon. And so we're excited to be here. And so today, I'm just going to back up quite a bit because I got about 2 weeks worth of headlines that I'm looking at right now. And one of the first things that I have on my headlines here, and this is kind of a serious headline. I look back, and we have one of our Republican senators actually that has discovered that, and he's very angry over the fact that the Biden administration has been providing veterans medical resources to illegal immigrants. One more time. Got a GOP senator that is fuming over the Biden administration providing veterans medical resources to illegal immigrants. So they've gone to the Veterans Administration, and they're providing what's intended for our veterans in our nation. They're providing those medical resources to illegals. That's to me, that's unacceptable. I'm a veteran, and I served during the Reagan years, and I'm just thinking to myself, that probably would not have happened in those days. I know it would not have happened in those days, but it's a shame to take our benefits or the things that are intended for our veterans and hand those to the illegals crossing the border. What do you think?
Well, that's definitely not the way that you honor a true hero.
No, I agree.
And you think about the people that's left their homes and went to foreign soil.
Yeah.
They've given their lives. Families changed. It just totally changed and turned around because of these men with that strong sense of duty to defend our nation, democracy all over the world. Right. And to do that is a slap in their face.
I agree.
It's disgraceful. It really, truly is.
I see that, and to be honest with you, these men and women that have served our nation so mightily, and so incredibly, on both here and abroad, during, for that. And I look at that, and we see right now, it's amazing to me, after the last 4 years, 7.2 million illegal immigrants coming into the nation, according to Fox News. It was kind of, I looked at those headlines and I thought, my goodness. And out of those nations, the top 9 nations, 7 of those are our sworn enemies that are, crossing the border into the nation. We see crime at an all-time high in some of these places. You've got in Atlanta, they're squatting in homes like crazy. I think it's the state of Michigan now that they've asked, hey, can you please help us to house these illegals that are coming in the door, as many as maybe 7 to your household to help them settle, but there's the word illegal there that gets to me. So the reality is we're using veterans benefits to help illegal, hold on. And then not just that, but we actually have a state government that says, can you help us break the law? So when your state government and your federal government is breaking the law to that which is illegal, you have a major issue.
I agree. Definitely. That's where everything becomes so undefined. You think about Texas, what they just had going through with their border, trying to put a fence up, and they were shot down on that.
Right.
And you look at even going back in history, you start seeing the states' rights goes all the way back to Civil War.
It does.
Yeah. And you think about not even being able to defend your own state. But and I'm all for people wanting to come to America. If I was in another country, America, I'd want to be here too.
Right.
But there's a process. There's a way that we do it correctly. And once you get here, there are certain benefits. There are certain privileges that are not allowed to you. And number one being where we hold our veterans.
Right.
Our veterans are one of the most precious resources we have.
They're
the true heroes.
They're
of America.
volunteers.
That's why we're here.
Yeah.
That's why we have America. It's because of these men and women
Right.
that have fought for our freedom. You know, I've got 3 sons. I've got my oldest 2 in law enforcement. My youngest one is in the military.
Yeah.
And he's been to Afghanistan, and he's been there, and he's came back and told me the stories, Dad, you wouldn't believe.
I'm sure.
You know, the things that our soldiers have endured on our behalf.
It's amazing. Yeah. Like you said, genuinely, true heroes. But this is definitely not something that honestly, I think to discover this is not a good thing. First of all, So that's one of my headlines today that I'm talking about. I'm looking at another headline. Rasmussen poll came out about which presidential figure they had the most respect for over the last 20 years. Donald Trump sits at the top. And, I think, I'm looking at Donald Trump as sitting at the top of that. He's not your key he's not your typical politician. No. I don't think, he's kind of one of us, really. He comes across like that. And he's really what you see is what you get. You get that authenticity, right. That comes from him. And with that, you see at the same time, this past weekend, Saturday was South Carolina's primary. And they were interviewing Democrats coming out of that primary. And there were many Democrats that were voting for Trump. And as they stopped to ask them the reasons why, one of the top answers was the fact that over the last 20 years, he is the one presidential candidate that went on to become president that actually stuck to his promises. Yeah. And he achieved his promises. And so there's a trust factor, I think, that's there. And the fact that you see that he's pretty genuine. He's what you see is what you get. He's not gonna hide it. He's not the guy actually that's gonna go in and looking for the big money to come in and all the benefits. I mean, like you're looking at Biden right now, and all the money that they're finding is going to his family and all of this stuff that's taking place. And what's he actually there for? And to be honest with you, at every opportunity with the green energy, someone's getting a kickback somewhere on that. Trump he's not looking for any of those kickbacks. He's not really looking for the power. I mean, goodness gracious, he's doing just fine where he is. But he comes on and he says, this is a great country. I believe this is a great country. And then he says, here's my plan for the country. And then he says, you can see what the plan was, but none of that's been achievable. Here's my plan. And though he kind of makes up the names and things like that, he's got a vision. Yeah. And he sets forth that vision, and he's not literally standing on negative campaigning. He's not just giving you those negative lines. He says, here's the vision. Here's what we're going to do. And he says, I've proven it. It works. And here's the way that it works. And I think that rings true. And I think the fact that all of that rings with the American people, some of the American people really well. Now, other people don't like the fact that there's 2 sides to the coin of genuineness and authenticity, you know. You've got heads and tails, and I think we like the head side. We're not so popular. We're not so good on the tail side in some ways, because sometimes he just says things that are on his heart in the moment.
Well, that's one thing about Trump. When he speaks, you never look at the guy sitting next to you and say, "What do you think he really meant?"
No, you don't. And I called this, by the way, just a few weeks ago. I called this when DeSantis dropped out of the race in Iowa. I thought, what in the world? He won Iowa and he's dropping out of the race. And I said, there's no way that he's not talked to Trump. Well, the next day Trump comes out and goes, no, he's not on my vice presidential list. But on Friday, by 2:00 in the afternoon, guess who's on the short list? Top name on the list, DeSantis. and I knew it. And I said something on the podcast. I said, watch, Trump will never let you, at this point, he'll step up, and today you might not be on his list, but tomorrow you might be high on his list. Yeah. And that's pretty amazing. I think the people, I think they like the genuineness. Yeah. One of the podcasts I talked about the fact that the number one word that was researched in 2023 was authentic. Number 2 was genuine. Googled, what does it mean? And so people are searching for authentic and genuine, and I think they see that there. He's not the typical politician that's going to blow a bunch of smoke in your direction, and to do something completely different for themselves. there's no doubt many people see that Trump actually is for the people.
That's right.
And that goes a long way.
Well, it seems like he has a heart for the average guy, the working Joe in America.
He does.
You know, it's like that's why he resonates so well with them, because he talks on their level.
Yeah, he does.
And he meets them on their level.
Sure.
He's not one of these guys that, grew up in this gated community, and had all these, and he's just a guy that people can talk to, they can relate to. That's what I like about Trump. And that was one of the things, with Trump, we was talking about earlier, you and I, about when it comes to the whole issue we was talking about just earlier about national security.
Yeah.
That's one thing that Trump did have. He was in a process of nailing down very well in America, was the security of our nation. And that is one of the number one responsibilities.
It is
the security of our borders. And we're talking about Reagan. Reagan, when was talking about when he was stumping for Goldwater, he talked about, he was talking about how that people from other countries, Cuba or wherever it might have been, was trying to get to America. America, this place where there's opportunity. A man can raise his family. A man can, if you have that entrepreneurial spirit, America, it can thrive. Right. This is the one place where you have liberty and you have a voice in America.
True.
It's not under a dictatorship, and you get to live the life you choose to live. And he talked about how that America was a refuge for these people.
Yes. But
for us Americans, we have to realize we don't have a refuge to run to. America, this is our last stand.
The refuge. That's right.
This is it. And God forbid that history record us as a nation that never had a nation that had so much to lose, yet did so little to retain it.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of qualities there that's similar between those two. Different personalities though.
It's almost like to me it's almost like we're like groping for things in dark. We're just blind. And in the blindness of reaching for something we're so often reaching for newfangled ideas and new things. But what we do is we throw out the tradition in some ways that we came up with to reach for the new things. And the sacrifice that goes our security in the middle of all of that.
And, one of the things that I like to think about that with our benefits, our rights as Americans, the Constitution, the preamble of the Constitution, it says, we the people,
right,
in order to form a more perfect union. We the people, the power in just that, we the people. And there's so many people that's never even read the Constitution.
Right.
There's so many people that's unaware of really what it's about. And if you go to the lake and you look around the edge of the lake, and you see all these trees that's growing on the edge of the bank, all around the lake, you'll see some of those trees, the root system is washed out halfway.
Right. Yeah.
Some places you'll see where the tree's actually already fallen into the lake because the foundation of that tree's been washed out. That didn't happen overnight.
No.
That's a slow, gentle, little unnoticed little wave of water that just slowly laps that bank, but over time erodes that foundation. And in some ways in America, we don't realize it, we don't see it, and sometimes we just refuse to see it. But some of these little changes that we're making, little things, is slowly washing away the foundation of what this nation is built on.
I completely agree with you on that. There's no doubt about that. And we see, I think there's a longing really, because we see that when we're reaching for some of these new things, the freedom begins to evade us even more.
Yeah.
And, that's a big deal. So that, going back, to that article real quick, it's just the fact that there's a lot of respect for Donald Trump because he's genuine. I think, you're not going to, and good and bad. That's what you get that both ways, as well.
But he's the kind of guy you feel like you can hang out with.
Yeah, he is. And there's, there's no doubt about that. So, so anyway, that's one of the, the other article, and this was at ABC, actually, I saw, this, and they were just talking about, and I just want to just touch on this. And this is off the cuff a little bit as I'm looking at, but I don't know if you knew this, but did you know what rattlesnake anti-venom is made of? Do you have any idea?
I believe I heard one time it actually has venom in it, doesn't it?
Sheep's blood.
Really?
Yeah. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Sheep's blood. Sheep's blood has once a sheep is bitten, it builds antibodies, against a rattlesnake. And they use sheep's blood to make antivenom for for a rattlesnake bite for human beings, and they inject that in, and it's sheep's blood that they get it from.
The blood of a lamb.
Blood of the lamb. Isn't that amazing? Just
That's a sermon.
I know it is a sermon. It is, but I thought that was really neat. That was one of the articles that I had found that I thought was kind of cool. And that's been out for a little while, but I thought it was really neat to kind of see that. And we were talking a minute ago about Michigan asking its residents to help, house and settle migrants in crisis in its crisis. Trying to help the crisis at the border. By the way, to take in more, people into your state and encourage your people to take them in is not helping the crisis at the border. I just want to say that's important. And so, and I saw, as well, that, Governor Kemp, this past weekend was he was upset about the fact that, Laken Riley was killed over there, near, University of Georgia, and because of the fact that the man that killed her was from Venezuela, and that the fact that he had been in New York, he'd been arrested and then set free, because they could not deport him back to Venezuela. Venezuela will not take their people back. 7.3 million people have left Venezuela since 2013. This year at the border, 308,000 tried to cross the border. Wow. 210,000 were successful and caught, in that. And so, but it's no telling how many have come of the 7.3 million. Where do you think they're headed? They're headed here. That's where they're headed, and so we see that. And I was talking about the fact that all of those, they have left, 7.2 million have come across the border of people since the Biden administration took office. 7.2 million people, that equals out to the population of 36 states. Yeah. And so that's huge. And 7 of the 9 of those top countries who are sending their people here are our sworn enemies. And I was talking to you about before. We've got some issues.
Yeah, and
we got some crime rising like crazy.
That precious family that's lost that young lady.
I know.
Our prayers go out to them. That's right. So tragic, but was avoidable.
It was avoidable. I agree. It was avoidable, and for Governor Kemp to step up and he says, "Close the border now." This is difficult. Close the border brings me to the fact. That brings me also to the fact that you. I saw you in the restaurant the other day, and we got to talking. But the night before, I found out that you were running for sheriff, and you're not here today because necessarily of that. I'd wanted to talk to you about this, and I just hadn't seen you in a while anyway. About coming to co-host with me some anyway. But you are running for sheriff of Rabun County, and I know that the listeners that are listening today, only about 38% of you are listening from Rabun County, and the rest of you are nationwide and worldwide. But we're not just talking about our county issues. We're talking about the counties of America. Now, the counties in America, there are literally just over 3,100 counties in America that there are sheriffs over those counties. And many of those went to Washington, D.C. in the last 2 to 3 weeks to meet with President Biden, who refused to meet with them. And so he sent a representative to address them. After the address, many of them went back to their counties and said, we have to have a plan for what is coming, not what what might come, but for what they know is coming. And so they went to formulate that plan. And it really got me to thinking about some things. First of all, the name of this podcast is called Casting with Great Wisdom. And it's really about casting our vote. It's like you said, we have the ability to have a voice. And I realize that there are many of you out there that think, well, my goodness, they cheated the vote and all of that, okay? But I promise you this much, you need to vote. You need to vote. Whichever way you think about that, you still need to get out and cast your vote, and you need to do it with wisdom. You need to know who the candidates are that are voting, from the national candidates all the way down to your local candidates, including your local sheriff. And probably your local sheriff is one of the most important votes you'll ever have, because that's the security of your county, that's there, and your people that you're looking at. So, this podcast, we're going to be talking about casting with great wisdom. You don't need to cast your vote because you're angry with someone else. You need to cast your vote because someone has a plan and someone has a directive, basically, that's for you as the people of the United States of America, in your communities, in your small counties, and even here in Rabun County. We need to be casting our vote because of the fact there's a plan for the people. And that plan includes the fact that we really, truly do care about the people of this county.
Yes. Yeah, and I agree with you totally right there. And that's what we were talking about before. If we want to see this nation change, if we want to see it go back to those traditional values, the things that we hold so dear, that we know that's made this the greatest nation on the face of this earth, we have to believe and understand it begins on the local level.
It does.
Because that's what makes it up. And one of the things about it is having that vision, having that plan, that goal, where you want to take things. And let's, for an example, if you have something personal against an individual, and that's your motive. Once you accomplish that, and you move into whatever position it is, having given no forethought to it whatsoever, that's not a very bright future.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a great point, because that brings up really the idea of negative campaigning, and so, which I've never been. Negative campaigning really since the days of Bill Clinton. Have been on a major uprise. I mean, and it just has. It's been now, how do we slander the next candidate that's going to come? But the reality of that, the bottom line of that is this, and this is what I've always understood. The man who reaches for darkness to achieve his goals at a time of crisis will reach deeper into the darkness and eventually fall into the hole. And once he falls into the hole, to get out of the hole, he will stand on people to get out of that hole.
Yeah.
And what that means is this: when you negative campaign, you don't really have that great of a plan for the future, let's say. And you've got nothing that you can really campaign on except for stomping on the next opponent because you're defining them on their worst moment of any day. And by the way, let me just say this. Nobody really wants to be defined by their worst day, and they don't want to watch you define someone else by their worst day. That just doesn't really work. That's reaching for the darkness, really, in some ways. And it doesn't mean that you don't campaign because things are not being done. Now, there's a difference when things are expected to be done and they're not. That's a whole different ballgame. But let me just say that when it comes down to it, when the person's climbing out of the hole, what they'll do is they'll blame those who are around them, or they'll blame the people. Very much like Biden has done. There were moments where he said, okay, the border crisis that we have, well, that is because of Donald Trump. No. 7.2 million came in since the day you took office. That's not Donald Trump, first of all. And the second thing that he said, I've heard him say this so many times, well, the American people. Well, the American people, they've just gotten used to lower prices, and then you need to get up with the times. Well, the American people, they're the reason why we're in the situation we're in. That's because of the fact that you use negative campaigning to get into office with no plan. Most senators that pretty much go on to become presidents usually don't have a plan because they've not legislated anything, right, in the case. But you look at Donald Trump and say, well, what about him? He was never in office. Thank God he was not a politician, really, because he stepped up as an American businessman and said the principles apply here as well. If you look at it, leadership is important, and he believed that leadership was important. Leadership in business is important. Leadership in family is important. Leadership on a national level is important. Leadership at the local level is important. And without key leadership with a plan, a vision for the future, you got nothing.
That's right. And having a list of objectives that you're trying to reach,
that's right,
that you're trying to meet, that vision and making it come to fruition. Now, I don't believe what makes a good council person, what makes a good senator, what makes a good sheriff is because I'm better at gossip and I'm better at running you down than you are me. So I'm a better sheriff. That is not the attributes of a sheriff. A sheriff has got to be a person who has a heart for the people, right, and a person who loves the sheriff's office, loves the people, loves that county, and as you said before, a person who has a plan.
That would be the key to Trump too, because if you look at it, he doesn't really need to be the president. He's not there because he's looking for, benefits and lobbying, and he's not there for those reasons. He's there, and you hear him step up and say, this is a great country, and I love the people of this country. And he truly does everywhere he goes. When he goes place to place to place. And where do you see him? He's out with the people. Yeah. And then when he gets on television, he goes to those interviews, he's asked the question, he tells you how much he loves the people. Yeah. Which is amazing. There's something about loving the people. And to be honest with you, being with the people is key. Being there and being able to communicate with the people. Here's the vision. Here's the plan. This is important. I've known you for 21 years, and in that time, I've known you as a person, that has been like Mr. Law Enforcement. You've lived, breathed, asleep, awake, doesn't matter. You don't go to sleep without thinking about, how does everything stay secure? Not just in your home, but I'm talking about even in the county. You've been someone who's actually researched on a national level to see what's going on in the world and watch the trend coming up the 441 corridor to our, to our area. And you're the one that's been, that I know of, you and I, at least in this conversation, that says somebody has got to really step up and understand and realize that these things that are happening on a national level aren't just on a national level. Some of these things are already right here, even in our small county and in all of the small counties in America. It's like, we're not Mayberry, we're not. Mayberry doesn't exist.
No, it doesn't. And that's one of the things, and I'll say this real quick, if I can just kind of back up a little bit. Let me just say, the other candidates in this race, I love and appreciate them.
Yeah, they got great careers.
There are men who have given their lives to this calling of law enforcement, and I have nothing personal against either one of them, and I hope the best for both of them.
Right.
We just have three different views.
Yeah.
Okay. And as I said, I just believe my views are better. And my focus is on that sheriff's office and taking it to the next level, making it a sheriff's office that if you've got friends up in town visiting you for the weekend and you're out in town and you see one of those deputies go by, I want you to be able to point your finger at them and say, that's one of our guys.
Yeah. So I think that's great. I think, to have, in it, right now, I know, you and I have spent some time actually at one of the local restaurants, the Rusty Bite Cafe.
Yeah.
I see you in there with the people and being with the people and answering the people. But I also know that in the last 20 years, you and we've been through some rough moments in our individual lives.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, tough moments. Mm-hmm. You've seen me in dark places.
Yeah.
I've seen you in dark places.
Yep.
I remember, going to Walmart one night and watching you at Walmart. I knew you were in a really rough place, but you were standing there talking to people at Walmart, because you and I can't go to Walmart without being in there like 2 hours. I mean, there's no going to get one thing. So, but the thing is that you never let those people even know. And it never looked like that. With you. And to be honest, when you talk to us, we wouldn't have known either, except for basically just kind of said, what is up, but then, there have been times in my life where I went through some difficult times, and we've called each other at some of the most difficult times of our lives. And you've been great counsel to me. We prayed with each other. Yeah. And so on the flip side, there was a point that I remember that I called you and you said, you really want to know where I am? And I said, yeah, I do. And you said, here's where I'm located, which was a rough place that you had to live. Here's what I have, which was literally not much more than the uniforms you had and the shirt on your back. In that I've lost it all. And one of the things you said, I've lost it all again. I remember that. And there's something that happens when you've lost it all that builds character in a way that's really amazing. Well, I got concerned, and the next day I decided I'll stop by your office and just see. Well, I walked in, there you were, man, high and tight, like a Marine, and sitting in the office. The job was never affected, never. And, I've known you for 21 years. No matter what you've been through in your personal life, the job was never, it never impacted the job, which that's always been impressive to me to see that, because you don't see that a lot,
Duty first.
Duty first. That's right. That's right.
That's it.
And, that's important. And, I remember also we always talked about, what's going on nationally. We've talked about that. How do we prepare? And, you were always helping prepare. You've helped the churches in the area prepare for things we never imagined we'd ever have to prepare for, active shooters and what to do, in case that was the situation. And I know your heart is for the school system as well, because we would have never imagined that people would be stepping off the streets, preying upon our children. Yeah. And we're seeing that even more now. We look at what's happening nationwide. We were talking about Lakewood Church and the shooter, that transgender, biological woman who brought her 7-year-old son in with her. And, walking into the church, and we see violence coming out of that, because they are not able to define, they're not able to get themselves out of the hole that they've been defined in. And so out of panic and frustration, they are, acting out, and violence comes in that frustration and that fury. you've messed with hormones and everything else. We can go into all those details. But the truth is, in the middle of all of that, we have danger that's lurking all around every corner. And then I remember we were in a very large meeting that I was at. You were there, and you had brought some people in to show what was going on nationwide. And they'd shown all these videos, and you had different speakers throughout the day. And at the close of that conference, you said, you don't think this is happening. You don't think it's happening in our little counties that we're in. But you said, it's here, folks. It's here. And it is coming like a freight train, basically coming, and we need to be prepared. And you guys left, that building, and y'all headed out basically to a place where you could go train outdoors to get prepared for those moments. That's always been your passion. We need to be prepared. We have to be prepared. I've been an international police chaplain, for 25 plus years. And one of the things that I do know about, law enforcement is that they are 9 times more likely to take their life than any other citizen in the U.S. because of the pressure that's on the job. Oftentimes because they're not prepared for what's coming, and there's great fear for that. And so that was your heart. You want to make sure that the men and women who are out there and, doing what they're doing, that they are prepared for what is to come, and they have everything they need to do the job.
Yeah, and violence is it's one of those things that we talk about mindset, and I want to kind of blend all this in with what you're saying. I've run a SWAT school now for right at 20 years.
Yeah.
And at that SWAT school, we've had about a 50% fail rate every time.
Wow.
And that's not something I say with pride, but I say that to show that the process of what we do that entire week is really intense. We put them through sleep deprivation, everything.
Right.
But it's more mental than it is physical.
Right.
And the point being, and I tell them at the very beginning, whoever told you that failure is not an option lied to you. Because failure is something that happens in life.
It does.
It's there.
Yeah.
We can't avoid it. Quitting is the option. You choose whether you stop or you go, regardless of the situation. And the whole point of that week is that training, that entire week is to cultivate and find and develop that mindset of that person that's going to stick with it. If you find yourself in a bad situation in a firefight, you want somebody that's going to stick close to you, and they're there to the end.
Right.
It's mindset. Everything physical we do begins first in our minds. Our minds are everything. And you talk about the one that went into the school and the churches and shooting people up. It all begins in the mind. It's mindset. It's the way that we raise.
They all have a manifesto usually now.
That's right. But it's the way that we have.
It's their doctrine. Basically.
Yes, we've departed from the traditional values.
That's right.
Of the family in America now, and to the point where. We were talking about this before, that if we don't raise children to learn to submit to the authority that they can see, when they grow up, become adults, and live on their own, they'll never submit to the authority they cannot see, and that authority being God and the Word of God, and those precepts that are put there to guide and to govern our lives. And I think it's the culture has so we live in a time where the church used to dictate the moral climate of a community. Now the community dictates the moral climate of the church. We've gotten everything so turned around and backwards now in this, and not just in this nation, but even in our little communities. And you have to have a progressive mindset, but also remain with those traditional values, those foundational truths that we can't get away from. And there are such a thing as absolute truths. In America today, there's this thought process of, well, there's no absolute truth. Where it talks about in the Bible, there in the Old Testament, it said in those days there was no king in the land, and every man done what was right in his own eyes.
Sure.
You see, we need absolute truths.
We
have
do.
to have them. And the Word of God being an absolute truth. And let me just say this real quick. Have you ever pulled up to a red light and you thought the car next to you was moving, or you didn't know if it was you moving? So you push your brake a little bit harder. You know that situation you're in? And it seems like the car or you are still moving, so you push your brake a little harder. How do you determine and find out if you're the one moving or not? You look out the window and you find an immutable, a fixed object, like a phone pole or a building, something that is steadfast, that does not move, and you reference yourself to that. That's how we determine if we're the one moving or not.
Right.
That's an absolute truth.
And so the ability to that biblically, you know, the scripture is the key right there that governs the hearts of men. You know, a couple of podcasts ago, I did one on consent, and you know, where a couple of people come together and they go, we have the consent of these two people, you know, and because we have the consent of these two people, that's made it right, or we have the consent of 15 adults, or we have the consent of culture at this point. But up until 1920, it was all about the consent of God, which has been taken out of the equation.
Yes,
it's the consent. Has God given us the consent to do? Because when God gives us the consent to do the things He's given us the consent to do, give us a great life.
Yes.
When men come together and they govern their own hearts like that, they destroy their lives.
Yes.
Because they live for each other, and that's it. What I can get, you know, and what I can take basically from each other instead of serving one another. Mm-hmm. You know, if anyone of you is going to be great in another one's life, you know, you'll become his servants. That's right. You know, you will, and that's a key as far as that. And so, you know, when it comes to law enforcement, it's to protect and serve. There's a protection factor, but you serve the people. We're protecting. Who are we protecting from? Us. We're being. You know, law enforcement protects us from us. That's a tough job. And today it's amazing how thankless that job has become on such a huge level. For what reason? Because you represent authority.
Well, and the thing is, law enforcement officers, they're exposed to things that people have no idea that exist.
Right.
To the most part.
That's right.
The things that we don't want to notice or attend to, we are a part of, and we see absolutely sometimes the very worst of people in society. And law enforcement officers, you got guys here that's working holidays. You know, they're not there for the children's birthdays. They're not there for Christmas morning. They're out there doing the job.
Right.
And yet at the same time exposed to things that are so life-altering, pictures they'll never remove from their heads.
Right.
You know, and the emotions, the things that they go through, coupled with the stress of the job. When we live in a time today where it seems like law enforcement has been so villainized by even the media, mm-hmm. and I just think it's we was talking about this earlier. Police officers, they appreciate it when people pat them on the back and shake their hand and tell them you're doing a good job. We're proud of you. Thank you for your service.
Right.
But I think some of the unsung heroes of law enforcement, they're unnoticed. You know, he's talking about before the detention officers. Mm-hmm. And here are people that are locked behind steel doors with individuals, for the most part, that don't like them.
Right,
and we house people in this county, in Rabun County, from other counties, not just in this county. But you've got all kind of people. You've got people with mental illnesses. You've got people
who killed someone.
You've got murderers. You've got rapists there. You have all kind of people that's there. And these officers are exposed to that. Yeah, they're going behind these locked doors with these people with no gun, nothing to protect themselves, just their bare hands.
Right.
And a shirt with an insignia on it of the sheriff's office. Those are the unsung heroes. Those are the people that's willing to step up with such a strong sense of duty to serve this community, to keep it safe. And here's what I want to just suggest that people do. If you know somebody that is a detention officer, shake their hand, pat them on the back, and thank them for a service unseen.
Yeah. Well, you're basically to be honest with you, you swear an oath when you take office.
That's right.
You bow a knee of allegiance, kind of like a knight would bow allegiance.
Yeah, we were talking about that before. Yeah, of the old days, they were called paladins.
Right.
And every morning that knight or that paladin, he would wake up, he'd put on a suit of armor, and he'd strap a sword to his side. And on his left chest was a shield that he had hung there. And on that shield was an insignia of the king or whose authority that he served under. And he would go out and all day he would protect people, and he would do good deeds in that area, in that land. And that's exactly what a law enforcement officer does. Every day they wake up and they put on the armor and they strap that sword, and on their left chest is a badge, and on that badge is the insignia of whose authority that they go out and they protect and they serve.
Right.
I believe law enforcement is a very noble position. I believe God actually calls people into that job. That's my personal belief.
Yeah, that's good.
But I believe that.
Yeah, that's very true, I think. You know, in this, we've been talking about leadership and leadership being so incredibly important. And to be honest with you, and when it comes down to it, you think that, but people love they love leadership, the right leadership that's being led right now. Last Friday, the numbers for the Gallup poll came out, and Biden's approval plummets to almost Carter levels. Rasmussen's poll came out about 3 weeks ago, where he plummeted below Carter levels. And but when you see Gallup begin to turn, we in the last 2 weeks we've seen MSNBC, NBC, CBS, CNN all begin to turn on that candidate because they can see I really think they can see sort of the writing on the wall of what's coming. And you've got talk show hosts that say it's a lack of leadership. We've not really had much leadership. Well, this is what I do know. Now is not the time to take any office that you're going to sit in, whether it's the president of the United States or whether it's the sheriff of your county. Now is not the time to put someone in office who's going to sit in a chair. Right. You need someone who's got a plan and prepared for what's coming. And so that's desperately what's needed. We already see what it's like to put someone in office, to who's going to sit there in the chair, and not really do a whole lot for the people. But the reality is now we seriously need someone who's going to step up with a plan, who's going to lead us ahead, which is why this election is the most important, because how we vote in this election from the president all the way down to the local levels is going to determine what happens for the next 12 years. We will feel the repercussions for the next 12 years. It is time that we got this right. We need some key leadership that is for the people.
Being the tip of the spear.
That's right.
Because I believe that work ethic, enthusiasm, and passion begins with leadership. Lee Robinson said one time, he said, everything rises and falls on leadership.
Yeah.
And as that tip of the spear, and we was talking about before, the status quo, it seems like it's affected us in all areas of life, even in industry, that people are looking for a title to obtain. It's not a title, but it's an opportunity.
Right.
And rather than sit there and wait for somebody else to step out and to do the right thing. And that's what most people we've been programmed to do that. We've been conditioned to do that. We believe in something and we look around for somebody to stand up, somebody to raise their hand, somebody to step forward. That's exactly what leadership is a person who's willing to step forward and lead the charge, whatever it might be. And if you step forward, people will follow you.
Right.
But it's got to be somebody that's willing to take that step forward and lead, actually be a leader.
Agreed.
And look at a person's life. You look at a person's life, their past, what kind of an individual are they? And I heard an old man tell me one time, he said, if you ever want to get something done, find the busiest guy you can and ask him to do it.
I used to recruit. I used to recruit for Columbia hospitals at one point in time. And I would go to places where people were working, even fast food restaurants. I would walk in the door at fast food restaurant, and the person who was working the hardest and running circles around everyone else, I would give them my card and say, in a few minutes, come sit with me. Mm-hmm. And I hired a staff that was absolutely amazing at one point at the cancer center that I was working at. As the director of a cancer center there, and I hired a staff that was absolutely incredible, and I took them from nothing. They didn't have some preconceived notion of what they had. I took them from nothing, and it was amazing what we were able to accomplish in those days. And that was taking care of patients that were coming in that were catastrophic in what they had going on in their lives. But it was amazing what we were able to accomplish, because you could go and see those people whose heart, and these are the people that love the work more. The paycheck is just a bonus. They love the work. And today you don't see that. I hear this all the time today. And one of the catastrophic things that's happening in America is that, and I see this, I was just at Mississippi State, 2 weeks ago, and I drove through the drive-thru, and there was a little lady at the drive-thru early in the morning, and I placed my order. At the speaker, she said, "Come to the first window." She took my order. Well, the second window was about 25 yards, a pretty good sized McDonald's. And I drove down to the second window, and I waited. There was nobody at the second one. I waited for a second, and all of a sudden, here comes this lady with my food that had just taken my payment at the last window. And I said, "Baby, listen to me. What is the deal here? Wasn't that you back there? Are you doing everything today?" She said, "I sure am." And I said, "Wow." She said, "Ask me if I'm liking it." I said, "Well, are you liking it?" She said, "It's something to do." But she said, "You can't hire anybody today that wants to work, and or will work for very long, because when you look at someone and says, 'I'm coming in for the paycheck,' or 'I'm coming in for the position,' you don't want that. You want somebody who's got a passion for the work."
somebody that doesn't come in with a list of demands.
And there you go.
But I just believe it's contagious.
It is contagious.
The right kind of leadership is contagious to those that you lead.
It is.
I honestly believe that.
That's because you glow. I mean, literally, when you're in that position that you've been set aside for your whole life, you're called to, you glow in that position, and that glow is contagious to those who are around you.
Yeah, let them know you care about them, you love them,
yes,
and you got their back. That's the biggest thing. If you stand up and you do right, I will stand with you, and I got you back. And it's the same thing with the community. And we were talking about this earlier. If I go to a church and a preacher gets up and preaches to me, and he's going to correct me. And as old timers say that, these old fashioned preachers get up and they nail your slats to the wall, man. They just lay it on you. And I'm okay with that if he loves me.
Right.
But if he doesn't love me and he doesn't genuinely care about me, he has no right to correct me.
That's pretty good right there. That's true, because the correction is done in love.
Yes.
And that is important. That's why it's one of the reasons why we discipline our children. We do it because we love them, which is a key. So, I think, there are a lot of promises, I think, that are made from people who will say whatever they want to, or they'll talk about things to get to a position. But then there are the ones, it isn't the position that they're after. It's the fact that, they care about the people. I've got a friend who works in a position who's fantastic at what they do, because they love the people, and they want to make sure that the people that are around them are taken care of. And they glow like nobody's business in the position that they're in. And most people that you find that are like that, when it's not about themselves, it's about the others. They find this amazing satisfaction in what they're doing and in life. I've known you a long time. It's always been about the people. It's why, and when we're talking about the dark moments, you did not want the people to suffer in the dark moments, in that, and which was important to you, You want to make sure they're taken care of. There is something to be said, I honestly believe, about your county sheriff, who is a man who wants to make sure you're taken care of. There's no doubt.
Well, I do. I love law enforcement.
I do know that.
Everything that it stands for.
You are like Mr. Law Enforcement.
But the thing is about security. He's talking about the government.
Yeah.
And everything that we know this nation is built on. What keeps those things in place and what keeps those things clicking and make things work is because you have security.
Right.
Anytime you build a nation and you put a government in place, one of the first things you have to establish is security.
Yes.
You have to provide that first and foremost,
it's true.
Or it will never stand. And the thing about it is, it's a passion for the people, the passion for law enforcement officers, and to be very honest with you, I cannot turn my back on a drowning man.
Right.
And I see an agency and people that are drowning.
Right. So here, with that, it's important, security is key. Your business will never thrive without it.
Right.
Your family's not going to thrive without it. Your church won't thrive without it.
Yeah.
And this nation will never thrive without it. We talked about 7.2 million coming across the border. We talked about crime that's at an increase in ways we've never seen. And what are we looking at? We're looking at the downfall of a nation. We're looking at the downfall of this nation because of the fact, that we've let go. Listen, you look at it financially. We're not shoring that up. When it comes down to it, with the protection of the people, we're not shoring that up in the nation. When it comes down to it, none of that's thought of. The American people are last place.
Yep.
And it ought not to be that way.
Well, the thing is this works on a worldwide scale.
It does.
Not just on an individual. Because before you can secure the safety of others, you must first secure your own.
Right.
And that comes in an individual. Before I can provide safety and security for you, for your family, for a community, I have to first establish my own.
That's right.
And I've got to be a person who actually lives it, and I exercise that in my own life.
Yeah.
As a nation, before we can ever be a true help to these other nations and spread democracy and get these and to help other people, we have to first help ourselves. We have to first secure our own safety and security here in this nation. And that's where we've gotten everything so backwards.
We have. Yeah, we're lacking a foundation, really, which is a key. One of the articles that I actually have, here, and I kind of wanted to just sort of wrap up a little bit in some ways with this, but this is Trump who last Friday, he says, with help from people of faith and God's grace, we can usher in one of the greatest revivals in America. The call is we need to bring back, our faith. We bring back our religion. And what he's talking about is he says this: we have to bring back our religion. We have to bring back Christianity in this country. He says, I'm a fellow believer, and I pledge to restore religious freedom as I win this election. Well, the last 4 years, when he was president for 4 years, that's exactly what he did. He literally loosened the chains on the church, if you will. And I'm looking over the last 4 years, and some of the articles I've just seen come out in the last few weeks is how we're weaponizing the government against, evangelicals in some way. They're being looked at, watched where you're spending your money in areas that, if you spend more than $300 in one place that might be considered to be conservative or religious, or you're buying books that are based on that, the government is weaponized against you. And, and they're talking about, they've been talking about that lately. Tim Scott wants to know, Tim Scott is asking the question. He's saying, how can this be? He's asking the Biden administration, how could you have turned on the people like this and allowed this to take place, against our American citizens that are great citizens? He wants to know that question. And why is it we've singled these out and no other? Well, here you've got Donald Trump that says we've got to bring this back. He says that's the core of the nation. And he gets down, he says, this is our foundation. And it is our foundation. It is our foundation of truth. It is our foundation. And because each man's heart is governed there. We talked about the rise and fall of Western civilization, and the fact that, the crumbling of Western civilization right now is the woke mindset, which is, to every man, he does what he feels like is right. But when it comes back to it, it really does need to come back to, who's governing us. Now, here's the final thing that I've got to say. Here's Donald Trump, who steps up and he says, I serve a God. I'm not just here by myself. I'm not the king of the nation. I serve a God who is higher than me. And, and my beliefs are, and the way that I act are based upon those principles. You're not taking that position so that you can be the key end all of power. But you're taking, when you step into that position, you understand that the end all of power and your final judge is God, and it is his word. And that's the foundation for not only truth, but, it's your compass for the future. And that's important. It is key, I think. There's some scriptures that we were looking at that I, was looking at here. And, Proverbs 29:2 says, when the righteous increase, the people rejoice. But when the wicked rule, the people groan. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm seeing lots of groaning going on in this nation.
Yes.
And that's, that's because we really do have wickedness in rule. A few weeks ago, I talked about the fact that, morality in itself, well, the church has lost at the battle on morality years and years ago. Unfortunately, we're also losing the battle on reality.
Yeah.
To the way that things are made, with the very things that are made and look before us. If you believe, if you stop for a second and believe that there's only a man and a woman, there are no other genders at that, which biology proves this to be the case, all of a sudden now you're the enemy. You're the one that's warped in the mind at this point. We're losing the battle on reality.
Yeah.
Life doesn't begin at conception. Life doesn't begin, but it does begin at conception.
Yes, it does.
And so we're losing the grip on reality. It's not just the grip. We're losing the battle, because the battle is no longer about morality. The battle is about reality, and holding on to that is a key.
And we've lost. If you're looked at, if you're not open to these things and embrace them, you're looked at as the bad guy. And what's happened is our morality has begun to dictate our theology.
It has.
In a big way.
Yeah.
And we've so devalued life in America. And as we say, beginning in the womb.
Right.
We have devalued it. And so obviously, we have lost that common respect and love and consideration, because life has no value anymore.
Right. And that's a shame. And that's one of the reasons why there's preying upon the children, preying upon the church, the sheep, if you will, which is there, you know. And then here's another one. Proverbs 29:12 is this: if a leader reaches for falsehood, all of his officials will be wicked. Again, going back to that, you know, if a leader basically reaches and, you know, reaching for that which is not truth, all the officials, all the people that he surrounds himself with will be, you know, wicked. You know, it's not just about, listen, this is the key that I think we need to understand. Why the vote's important, why casting it with great wisdom is key and important, is because it isn't just about who goes in place. When Reagan took office, he surrounded himself with great people. He had a great cabinet. They were fantastic. You know, Alan Greenspan was a fantastic, you know, chairman of the Federal Reserve, you know, and a key to, you know, moving forward Reaganomics, and, you know, had a great economic plan in the day. You know, when men come and they surround themselves with great people.
Yes.
You know, as they go on, a great leader surrounds himself with great people, not so that he can be the focus of everything, but he actually surrounds himself with people that he in areas that he's weak in, so that the whole team can be strong, if you will. You know, in that. So it's not just about your national leadership, about who's going to be just the one in charge, but it's also about everyone who surrounds him, who he's going to choose, including Supreme Court justices, including, you know, people that are around him, you know, and it includes even in your local sheriff's office. Who are you surrounding yourself with?
That's right.
You know, you don't want to be surrounding yourself with, you know, these, you know, this one, hey, this one's my favorite. That's my people who are equipped to do the job, which is important.
That's right.
And that same person who's doing that also at the same time is not just taking into consideration the people that are his buds and the people that got him into office or whatever. You know, he is actually taking into consideration all people. Because here it is in Raven County. We've got 4,000 brand new voters that have registered since the last election. And so there's 4,000 brand new people in Raven County alone, our county. So it isn't just about who grew up here. It's about all.
That's right.
And one of the things that I've loved about you and I, when we're out in local places, it doesn't matter who's talking to us, whether they're from here or they're not from here. It's about all.
Yeah.
We care about the local people, but we also care about, doesn't matter where you came from, you know, because, you know, the bottom line is we're all Americans. We really are. We're all citizens of the United States, you know, that have come here. And all deserve the protection, and all deserve the leadership, all deserve the counsel, all deserve the listening ear to be heard. And that's important.
Yeah, because if a person is wicked-minded, they're going to surround themselves with wicked-minded people, people of like mind. And when it comes to leadership and those you put around you, that it's not because they've been there the longest. In other words, a person is not eligible for promotion because they've been there the longest, but because they are fit for promotion.
Right.
They're due that promotion.
That's a good point, yeah.
And they're worthy of it. And the same thing comes with, you know, this unholy marriage, you know, because a person is your buddy or because they did support you, well, you're going to give them a position. That's not the way good leadership works.
Failed for the Carter administration.
That's right.
It's failed for the Biden administration.
And you know, it's kind of like that leader is a person who's going to have people around him. It's not going to be a bunch of yes men or women.
Oh yeah.
You know, Proverbs says that faithful are the wounds of a friend, but deceitful are the kisses of an enemy.
Right.
So if a friend will tell you the truth. A friend will look at you and the right counsel around you, because there's wisdom in that multitude of counsel. The right people will say to you, you know what, I think you're making a bad decision. I think we need to reconsider this. I think you need to look at this.
Right.
That's what makes a difference, is having that kind of leadership, which is not a dictatorship, but it's a leader surrounded by wisdom.
That's great. I agree with that completely. And you see the successful, to be honest with you, we can go back and look, at least even from 1900 forward, and see all the successful presidencies that were there. They were surrounded with great people.
That's right.
You know, that helped them along in the process. So I mean, that's the key. At the same time, it's something you said about, a wicked leader will surround themselves with wicked people. Well, that's when you get the kick the dog syndrome.
Yeah.
Where the leader kicks the person below them, and that person kicks the person below them, and that person kicks the person below them. And eventually the person that's low on the totem pole will go home and kick the wife, who eventually will kick the dog, or kick the spouse, and eventually will kick the dog, is what I'm trying to say, in that. And so everyone's disappointed from the whole level. You don't want that at all. One of the things that I do know is, following a leader that is qualified, has a passion for what they're doing and is pouring in their passion into you, which is contagious in that, you find people who are going home at the end of the day at work, even though it's been a difficult day and maybe they've put their lives on the line, that are satisfied and lay their head on the pillow at night and rest well.
And I don't believe no man is satisfied with his work unless he's putting his full self in it.
That's good.
And showing everybody they have value and worth. Everybody has value and they have worth.
They do.
And you find what somebody's good at, and you let them do it.
That's right.
Honestly, that's what makes things work well.
Agreed.
Rather than just trying to appoint people, you find out where their attributes are, their talents, their passion, and you basically
let them thrive.
Yes, you let them go. And I think one of the things is being active in leadership. That a lot of leaders can be, they're a member of this, and they're on this board and on this board, and they're a member of this, but they're not active members in anything. They're there to say, okay, I'm here and I'm there. But a leader who's active, who wants to see change and bring about change, the leader is the one who's going to pull everything together. Heraclitus was a guy that was about 500 years before Christ. He trained warriors. Here's what he said. He said, out of every 100 men they send me, 80 of them shouldn't even be here. 9 or 10 of them are nothing but targets. Of the 10 that are left, 9 of them are good soldiers, and we're lucky to have them, for they'll carry the battle. He says, but one of them is a warrior, and I must find him, for he'll bring the others back.
That's good.
That's a leader.
That is a leader.
That's
Agreed.
a leader.
Agreed. Mm-hmm. Well, today I think, leadership, to be honest with you, at the core begins with that love for others and that compassion of the heart that is there. And you and I, both in our discussions through the years, I do know I've seen in your face the concern for the things that are coming, and the things that are already here. There are things that we cannot even talk about that are already within our own county that we know about. And there are in the small towns that, of people who are listening as well, and the places that people are listening. It's already here.
Yes.
The question is, are we prepared? Are we getting prepared? And how are we doing that? What are we going to do, for the future? And why are we preparing? We're not, here's the thing. We're not preparing just so we can go spend money. We're not preparing just so that we can, say that, hey, we achieved, look at what I achieved. Look at all of my, look at what's on my job, achievement, whatever, it's not about that. We're doing what we're doing, and we do the things that we do because most of the time it's thankless, first of all, but second of all, it's necessary.
That's it.
And it's a key. And it really, and to be honest with you, you look at it and you say, I could look at you and say, law enforcement, I could look at you and say, well, wait a minute, law enforcement is your heartbeat, but your heartbeat is not law enforcement. Your heartbeat is the fact that you care for people. Yeah. And that is the heartbeat, which is what drives the law enforcement that is coming out of you. Yeah. And so it's true. It's an overflow of who you are at the core. And at the core of that is true and genuine, I believe, leadership, because I've known you for years. There's a great concern for all of those things. So today, let me just say, you've been listening to Grounded. I'm your host, Scott Cates. And so today, this is important that you understand that we're talking about the fact that we're casting with great wisdom. You're going to cast a vote with great wisdom. There is no higher wisdom than the wisdom that comes from the power of the Spirit of God to human beings. If you do not know Jesus Christ as Savior and Lord, there is one thing that's in the way between you and God, and that is your sin. I hear people say all the time, well, you're saved from hell. You're actually saved from your sins, which get you cast into hell. And so understanding that you need the forgiveness of your sins to be able to walk with God and have the wisdom that actually does come from God. And that is important for you. But in order for that to happen, Romans 10:9 says that if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. It's important that you understand this. It's with that confession of the mouth that the heart actually speaks. We're saved as a result of the fact that we've come to Jesus and said, I need you more than anything. It isn't about some ticket to get to heaven. It literally is about the fact that we want Jesus in our life more than anything. Going to heaven is a perk, but having Jesus is the key and the core, and it's so incredibly important. In order for that to happen, you must stop and say, Lord, forgive me of my sins so that I can walk with you because I want you in my life more than anything. I need you to guide me and direct me and become the leader, the Lord of my life. So come into my life today. Please, Lord, forgive me of my sins. Save me and help me to walk with you in your guidance. Guide my footsteps from this point forward. And I promise you, you will never regret it if you give your life to Jesus. If you want to cast a vote with great wisdom, you need to pray now, right now, not get to Super Tuesday and decide you're going to pray. Start praying now. The second thing you need to do, know your candidates. Know what the plan is. I'm not talking about necessarily just knowing about them. I'm talking about knowing what is the plan for the future. This is key. This is going to be casting with your vote with great wisdom right now. It's going to be the most important decision you're going to make for your county, for you, for the nation. As you go to cast that vote, it is important. And it's going to affect not just the next 4 years, but the next at least 12 from the repercussions that will come from how those votes are cast. So I encourage you, pray hard for your candidates. Pray hard for Mark, those of you that are listening today, but pray hard for your candidates. Pray hard for those that are out there, and let God help you to choose to make a decision wisely of how you will cast that vote. Well, Mark, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm glad that you were here. We'll do this again at some point. And I thank you for listening to Grounded folks that are out there, and we'll see you next Monday.